2,500 years ago, Socrates understood something that modern society has forgotten. Purpose isn't something you stumble upon by accident. It's not handed to you in a career fair or found at the bottom of a self-help book. Purpose is something you uncover through relentless self-examination, through asking the right questions, and through having the courage to live according to what you discover. But here's what makes Socrates different from every other philosopher who ever lived. He didn't claim to have all the answers. In fact, he claimed to know nothing at all. "I know that I know nothing," he famously declared. This wasn't false modesty. This was the foundation of his revolutionary approach to living with purpose. He understood that the moment you think you have life figured out, you stop growing, you stop questioning, and you stop living authentically. The oracle at Delphi once declared Socrates the wisest man in Athens. When he heard this, he was genuinely confused. So he went around the city talking to politicians, poets, craftsmen, and teachers, trying to find someone wiser than himself. What he discovered was shocking. Everyone he spoke to claimed to know things they didn't actually know. They were living unexamined lives, following scripts written by others, pursuing goals they'd never questioned. This is where Socrates' method becomes transformative for your life today. He developed what we now call the Socratic method, a way of questioning that peels back the layers of assumption and reveals the truth underneath. It's not about finding quick answers. It's about asking better questions. And the quality of your questions determines the quality of your life. Most people live their entire lives without ever asking themselves the fundamental questions that Socrates insisted were essential. What do I truly value? Why do I believe what I believe? What assumptions am I making about success, happiness, and meaning? Am I living according to my own values? Or am I following a path someone else laid out for me? Here's the uncomfortable truth that Socrates would force you to confront. Most of what you think you want isn't actually what you want. It's what you've been told to want. The career path, the lifestyle, the relationships, the goals you're chasing. Many of them are inherited from your parents, your culture, your social media feed, or your peer group. You're living someone else's definition of success and wondering why you feel empty. Socrates had a radical solution for this. He believed that virtue, not pleasure or external achievement, was the key to a meaningful life. But his definition of virtue wasn't about following rules or being morally superior to others. It was about living in alignment with your deepest understanding of what is good, true, and beautiful. This is where most people get Socrates wrong. They think he was some kind of ancient life coach, offering feel-good wisdom about following your passion. But Socrates was far more challenging than that. He believed that most people are asleep, sleepwalking through life, and that waking up to reality is often painful. The examined life isn't necessarily a comfortable life. It's a conscious life. This isn't pessimistic. It's liberating. When you release your attachment to being right, when you embrace intellectual humility, you become genuinely curious about life. You start asking questions instead of defending positions. You become a student of your own experience rather than a prisoner of your assumptions. But Socrates went even further. He argued that it's better to suffer injustice than to commit it. This wasn't just moral posturing. He lived this principle even when it cost him his life. When the Athenian authorities put him on trial for allegedly corrupting the youth and questioning the gods, he refused to compromise his principles to save himself. He could have escaped. He could have apologized. He could have promised to stop asking uncomfortable questions. Instead, he chose to drink the hemlock and die for his commitment to the examined life. What does this mean for you? It means that living with purpose requires courage. The courage to question everything, including your own beliefs. The courage to admit when you're wrong. The courage to change course when your examination reveals that you've been heading in the wrong direction. the courage to live according to your values, even when it's inconvenient or unpopular. Socrates understood that most people avoid self-examination because they're afraid of what they might find. What if you discover that the career you've been building isn't fulfilling? What if you realize that the relationship you're in isn't authentic? What if you find out that the goals you've been chasing aren't actually your goals? These realizations can be terrifying, but Socrates would argue that they're also the beginning of real freedom. The Socratic approach to finding purpose isn't about setting goals and achieving them. It's about understanding yourself so deeply that your actions naturally align with your values. It's about developing such clarity about what matters to you that decision-making becomes simpler, not because the choices are easy, but because your criteria are clear. Here's how this works in practice. These questions don't have quick answers. They require ongoing reflection, honest self-assessment, and the willingness to sit with uncertainty. But this is exactly what makes them powerful. Quick answers lead to quick fixes. Deep questions lead to lasting transformation. Socrates also understood that you can't examine your life in isolation. He spent his days in the marketplace, engaging with others, challenging their assumptions while having his own challenged in return. He knew that other people serve as mirrors, reflecting back to you aspects of yourself that you can't see on your own. This is why meaningful conversations are so important for discovering your purpose. Not small talk or gossip, but real dialogue about ideas, values, and meaning. When you engage with others who are also committed to the examined life, you create a community of inquiry that supports everyone's growth. But here's the paradox that Socrates embraced. The more you examine your life, the more you realize how much you don't know. This isn't a problem to be solved. It's a feature of conscious living. The person who thinks they have life figured out has stopped growing. The person who remains curious, humble, and open to new understanding continues to evolve throughout their entire life. Socrates believed that this ongoing process of examination and questioning was itself the purpose of human life. We're not here to accumulate achievements or maximize pleasure. We're here to become more conscious, more virtuous, more aligned with truth. The purpose isn't a destination you arrive at. It's a way of traveling through life. This ancient wisdom is more relevant today than ever. We live in a world of infinite distractions, endless options, and constant pressure to have everything figured out. Social media shows us curated versions of other people's lives, making us question our own choices. The pace of change means that career paths that made sense a decade ago might be obsolete today. Traditional sources of meaning, like religion and community, have weakened for many people. In this context, Socrates' approach offers something rare, a method for finding your own way that doesn't depend on external validation or changing circumstances. When you know how to examine your life, when you're committed to ongoing self-inquiry, when you have the courage to live according to your discoveries, you become anti-fragile. You don't just survive change, you use it as fuel for growth. The Socratic path to purpose isn't easy, but it's authentic. It doesn't promise quick results, but it delivers lasting transformation. It doesn't offer comfortable answers, but it provides a reliable method for finding your own truth. Now that we've explored how to question everything and live authentically, we need to address the elephant in the room. How do you actually practice this in a world that seems designed to pull you away from self-reflection? How do you build the courage to face uncomfortable truths about yourself when it's so much easier to scroll through your phone or binge another series? This is where Socrates becomes not just a philosopher, but a practical guide for daily living. Because the Socratic life isn't lived in grand gestures or dramatic moments of enlightenment. It's built through small, consistent practices that slowly transform how you see yourself and the world around you. Let's start with the most powerful tool Socrates gave us: strategic ignorance. This sounds like a contradiction, but it's actually revolutionary. In our age of information overload, where everyone has an opinion on everything, Socrates teaches us the art of saying, "I don't know," not as a weakness, but as a superpower. Think about the last time you were in a heated argument. What if, instead of defending your position at all costs, you paused and said, "You know what? I might be wrong about this." This isn't giving up or being weak. This is being Socratic. You're prioritizing truth over being right, understanding over winning. But here's what makes this practice so difficult. Our culture rewards certainty. We're supposed to have opinions, takes, hot takes on everything from politics to coffee brands. Admitting ignorance feels like admitting defeat. Socrates would laugh at this. He knew that the person who admits they don't know something is the only person capable of learning something new. Start small. The next time someone asks you about something you haven't deeply considered, try responding with genuine curiosity instead of a quick opinion. "That's interesting. I haven't thought about that enough to have a real opinion." Watch how this changes the conversation. Watch how it changes you. The second practice is what I call the evening inventory. Socrates believed that the unexamined life is not worth living, but examination doesn't happen accidentally. It requires intentional time and space. Every evening, before you get lost in entertainment or social media, spend just 10 minutes asking yourself 3 questions. First, what did I do today that aligned with my values? Not what you accomplished or achieved, but what you did that reflected who you actually want to be. Maybe you listened to a friend without trying to fix them. Maybe you chose honesty when a small lie would have been easier. These moments matter more than your productivity metrics. Second, what did I do today that contradicted my values? This is the hard one. This is where you confront the gap between who you say you are and who you actually are. Maybe you gossiped about a colleague. Maybe you chose comfort over growth. Maybe you avoided a difficult conversation you know you need to have. Don't judge these moments. Just see them clearly. Third, what assumptions did I make today that I didn't question? This is pure Socrates. We move through our days making thousands of assumptions about people, situations, and ourselves. Most of them go unnoticed. But when you start catching them, when you start questioning them, you begin to see how much of your reality is constructed rather than given. The third practice is the art of productive discomfort. Socrates spent his life making people uncomfortable, not because he enjoyed it, but because comfort is the enemy of growth. We avoid discomfort at all costs, but discomfort is often where the most important truths live. This doesn't mean seeking out suffering for its own sake. It means leaning into the conversations, situations, and questions that make you squirm a little. When you feel that familiar urge to change the subject, check your phone, or make a joke to diffuse tension, pause. Ask yourself, what is this discomfort trying to tell me? Maybe it's revealing a value you've been ignoring. Maybe it's showing you a blind spot you've been avoiding. Maybe it's pointing to a fear you need to face. The goal isn't to eliminate discomfort, but to get curious about it. Here's a practical way to start. Once a week, have a conversation that matters. Not small talk, not networking, but a real conversation about something that actually matters to you or the other person. Ask someone how they're really doing and then listen to the answer. Share something you're struggling with instead of just your successes. Talk about values, meaning, purpose, the things we usually avoid because they're too heavy. These conversations will feel awkward at first. We're so used to surface-level interactions that depth feels foreign. But this is where life happens. This is where you discover who you really are and who other people really are beneath all the social masks. The fourth practice is perhaps the most challenging. questioning your inherited beliefs. We all carry beliefs we never chose. They were handed down to us by our families, our culture, our experiences. Many of them serve us well, but some of them are limiting us in ways we can't even see. Socrates would have you examine every belief like a detective examining evidence. Where did this belief come from? What evidence do I have that it's true? How does it serve me? How might it be limiting me? What would I believe if I had been born in a different family, a different culture, a different time? This isn't about becoming a relativist who thinks nothing is true. It's about becoming someone who holds their beliefs consciously rather than unconsciously. It's about choosing your convictions rather than inheriting them blindly. Start with one belief that feels absolutely true to you, something you've never questioned. Now question it, not to destroy it, but to understand it. Where did it come from? What experiences shaped it? What evidence supports it? What evidence might challenge it? How does it affect your choices and relationships? The goal isn't to become wishy-washy or uncertain about everything. It's to become someone who believes things for reasons they can articulate, someone who holds their convictions with both confidence and humility. The fifth practice is what Socrates called care of the soul. In a world obsessed with optimizing everything from our productivity to our sleep cycles, Socrates reminds us that the most important optimization is the optimization of character. This means asking different questions. This shift in questions changes everything. It moves you from trying to control external outcomes to developing internal strength. It moves you from seeking happiness to building the kind of character that can find meaning even in difficult circumstances. Practically, this means making decisions based on who you want to become rather than what you want to achieve. When facing a choice, ask yourself, which option would the person I want to become choose? Which option develops virtues like courage, wisdom, justice, and temperance? Which option serves not just my immediate desires, but my long-term flourishing as a human being? The final practice is perhaps the most important, embracing the journey rather than demanding the destination. Our culture is obsessed with outcomes, with getting somewhere, with achieving something. Socrates offers a different path, the path of ongoing inquiry, of continuous growth, of perpetual becoming. This means giving up the fantasy that you'll figure everything out, that you'll reach some point where you have all the answers and can coast. It means embracing the reality that growth is a lifelong process, that wisdom is a practice, not a possession, that the most important questions don't have final answers. This isn't depressing, it's liberating. It means you never have to pretend to have it all figured out. It means every day offers new opportunities for discovery. It means your failures and confusion aren't signs that you're doing life wrong. They're signs that you're alive and growing. These practices aren't easy. They require courage, patience, and a willingness to be vulnerable. They require you to give up the comfortable illusions that keep you stuck in exchange for the uncomfortable truths that set you free. They require you to trade the shallow satisfaction of being right for the deep satisfaction of seeking truth. But this is what it means to live with purpose in the deepest sense. Not to have a mission statement or a 5-year plan, but to be committed to the ongoing work of becoming fully human. Not to have all the answers, but to be devoted to asking better questions. Not to avoid difficulty, but to meet it with wisdom and courage. In our next exploration, we'll discover how these practices transform not just how you see yourself, but how you engage with others and the world around you. Because living with purpose isn't a solo journey. Now we reach the most challenging part of Socrates' philosophy of purpose, living these principles in a world that seems designed to distract us from them. The ancient Athenian marketplace where Socrates wandered, questioning and examining, feels remarkably similar to our digital age. Then, As now, people were busy, distracted, and often resistant to deep reflection. The difference is that today's distractions are more sophisticated, more persistent, and more seductive than anything Socrates could have imagined. Social media algorithms feed us endless streams of other people's curated lives, making us question our own worth through comparison rather than genuine self-examination. The news cycle demands our outrage and attention every few hours, pulling us away from the inner work that creates lasting purpose. Consumer culture promises that the next purchase, the next upgrade, the next experience will finally give us the fulfillment we seek. But Socrates would have recognized these as sophisticated versions of the same illusions that plagued his contemporaries. The Socratic path becomes even more radical in our current context. In an age of information overload takes tremendous courage. To sit with uncertainty when Google promises instant answers requires discipline most people never develop. To examine our lives when everyone around us seems content with surface-level existence feels lonely and difficult. Yet this is precisely when Socratic principles become most valuable. When everyone is shouting, the person who listens stands out. When everyone is performing, the person living authentically creates real connection. When everyone is chasing external validation, the person who has done the inner work of self-knowledge radiates a different kind of confidence. Consider how Socratic questioning applies to our modern dilemmas. The practice of admitting ignorance becomes revolutionary in an age where everyone is expected to have opinions on everything. Yet this humility creates space for genuine learning and growth that the certainty of our age destroys. The nightly practice of self-examination takes on new urgency when our days are fragmented by notifications, meetings, and constant stimulation. Most people reach the end of the day unable to remember what they actually did or felt because they were never truly present for any of it. The Socratic practice of reflection becomes a way of reclaiming our own experience, of turning a series of reactions into a conscious life. Living with purpose in the Socratic sense means accepting that you will often appear strange to others. While they chase the latest trends, you're asking fundamental questions about what makes a life worth living. While they accumulate achievements and possessions, you're focused on character development and authentic relationships. While they seek comfort and certainty, you're embracing the discomfort of not knowing and the challenge of continuous growth. This path requires what we might call philosophical courage. It's the courage to disappoint others by not living according to their expectations. It's the courage to appear foolish by admitting what you don't know. It's the courage to change your mind when you discover you were wrong. It's the courage to prioritize being true to yourself over being accepted by others. But here's what Socrates understood that many modern self-help approaches miss. This isn't about becoming a different person. It's about removing the layers of conditioning, assumption, and external expectation to discover who you actually are underneath. Purpose isn't something you create or manifest. It's something you uncover through the patient work of self-examination and authentic living. The Socratic approach to purpose is ultimately about alignment. When your actions align with your deepest values, when your external life reflects your internal truth, when your daily choices serve your highest good rather than your immediate impulses, you experience what the Greeks called eudaimonia, often translated as happiness, but better understood as human flourishing. This flourishing isn't dependent on circumstances. Socrates maintained his sense of purpose and inner peace even when facing execution. He had done the work of knowing himself so thoroughly that external events, however dramatic, couldn't shake his fundamental sense of who he was and what mattered most. This is the ultimate gift of Socratic philosophy, the development of an unshakable core that no external force can disturb. When you know yourself deeply, when you've examined your life thoroughly, when you've aligned your actions with your values consistently, you become like a tree with deep roots that can weather any storm. The journey never ends. Each day brings new opportunities for self-examination, new questions to explore, new depths of understanding to discover. Socrates would remind us that the moment we think we've figured it all out is the moment we stop growing. The wise person remains curious, humble, and open to learning until their final breath. Your purpose, in the Socratic sense, is not a destination to reach, but a way of traveling. It's not a problem to solve, but a mystery to live. It's not a possession to acquire, but a practice to embody. And in a world that promises easy answers and quick fixes, this patient, lifelong commitment to self-knowledge and authentic living becomes the most radical and transformative choice you can make. The unexamined life is not worth living, Socrates taught us. But the examined life, the life lived with purpose through continuous self-discovery and authentic expression, is the richest adventure available to human beings. Your journey of examination starts now, with the next question you ask yourself, the next assumption you challenge, the next moment you choose authenticity over approval. This is your invitation to live not just any life, but a life worth living.